Hey there, mamas. So today we're gonna do something a little bit different at first. I've got this diaper cut that's not for my own pattern. It's somebody else's pattern, so I don't have any information about it besides the cut, right? And if you had a diaper that you liked the fit of, you could do the same thing by stretching out the elastics and marking how long it is at each point and the curves and whatnot. But for this one, I have a cut, and we're gonna turn this cut into one of my field dry cutout all-in-ones, the kind like I did on the live stream, where there's the soaker pad in the middle of the diaper, and then the snake soaker down the middle, and then there's going to be either pull or anti-pill fleece around the outside edges. So if you want to go look at the old live stream, I did that for that, but we're going to do a tutorial for that today. And the first step when you're working with a diaper without a pattern, without a template, is how does this become that pattern? What are the common things we do knowing just the outer cut to make that into a usable diaper? So this is a one size cut. It's a 3x3 rise. That changes how long the elastic casings are. Also, it's a square type pattern, so there's going to be differences in the top. So we're working with a square type pattern, and I've marked some lines ahead of time. I tried doing it on camera, and it turned out weird. So we're just going to show it already drawn, and I'll talk about why things are the way they are. So here we've got our overall shape. The first thing that's easy to do is mark your seam allowance, right? So for me, I tend to use about 1/4 inch. You can do it a little more if you feel like you need a little bit more. I do 1/4 inch because that fits really well with my sewing foot, just my standard foot right along the edge, and I use my foot to guide me, so I use 1/4 inch. And then I just mark that around to know where my seam line is. Now, depending on if it's a fitted or a pull diaper, that distance to the next line is going to be different because the thickness of the diaper is going to change. The thickness of the materials is going to change how much space you need to leave for that elastic casing. Since this is a diaper plan that's designed for a pull diaper, you basically take your elastic that you're going to be using. For me, it's 3/8 inch. And you lay it down in the middle of that, and you give a little bit of extra space around it. And that's to accommodate the thickness of the fabric and the thickness of that elastic. So you can see both lines outside it. It's a little bit inset. That's my elastic and my elastic casing line. Now, the distance of that and where it starts and ends has a little bit to do with the fit of the diaper. And the way that I mark that is by taking a vertical line up from this line through the middle. And that's the end of my casing here at the back. So then we've got our 1/4 inch for our seam allowance, and then we've got our elastic casing size, and then this is the end point. And it's the same thing on both sides. You follow that straight up part to the top. And then whatever that distance is to the end of the wing, we're going to mimic that distance to this point here. So for here, it's 3.5 inches. So then from here to the next casing, I've got it 3.5 inches. And that makes for a nice even wing length. It can be about 1/2 inch longer or 1/2 inch shorter. It's not going to be super strict. And if you're doing a long winged pattern, this back elastic might be a little longer, and then thus this might be a little bit longer. But for a square tab pattern, this is kind of the universal way to shape it through the middle. And everybody's midlines are a little bit different. Mine is narrower through the middle than this one is. And so that's how you get the end here. Now the front end, if it's a 3x3 rise, I go about halfway up to 2/3 of the way up between the first two snaps. If it's a 4x2 rise, then I would do it just close to the second snap. So that line would be if it was a 4x2, and then this line here about halfway between these two for a 3x3. So we've got our line there. We've got our line back here because it's 3.5 inches, which is what this is here. And that'll make a nice even tab that folds across the front well. And then this here will make it so that you're not bunching up on your snaps, and you're going to just get the maximum rise for these higher snap settings for when it's at the fuller rise, when it's at the higher rise for a bigger baby. So now you've got your leg elastics, your back elastics marked, or just, you can eyeball it after a little while. And since I'm going to be doing a cutout style, I'm going to go 2 leg elastic widths in. And this is going to be my soaker pad. My soaker pad is going to be another of that same distance in to the end of the soaker pad. And that gives you enough room to sew with your foot not getting stuck you know, on where your elastic's going to be, on any of your other seams, because the thickness of the soaker pad will make it a little bit harder to sew without that space there. Also, when it all curves up, the bulk will make it kind of draw in. And then the next line in from that, I've got it kind of faint on here, but that next line in from that is going to be the cutout line. So the line where you're actually cutting out. So while it's pull and then a soaker pad, for this one, it would be, you know, it could be pull, it could be anti-pill fleece, whatever it is, wherever your cutout is on that style. And I'll be doing that when I sew in a little bit here. So wherever that cutout is, you're going to draw that line about another 1/4 inch in so that you have enough overlap of those two layers. Some people put them together and then serge around at the back end. I like to just overlap and zigzag them down, but you know, however you want to do it, it's good to have that little bit of space there to do whatever you need to do with. That's really it for that. Now for if you're using it, making it insert, if you're making a pocket diaper for this diaper and you need to make an insert for it and you want to have the right width of that insert, the insert is going to be that same width as your soaker pad width here. So for me, it tends to be about 4 3/4 inches, and for this one, it is 4 3/4 inches. So you'd want to do like a rectangle or a rounded rectangle that fits down that middle with enough space in between the elastic and it to accommodate for the thickness. Whether that thickness is for doubling them up or having a fold and trifold in there or whatever, you've got to have some space to account for that size. And that's the bulk space, right? That's the space that you need in a diaper. And so 4 3/4, 4 1/2, somewhere like that. And then the length is typically between 14 and 16, depending on the rise of the diaper. And the way that you tell that is basically once the diaper's all sewn, you just see what that kind of inside area is. You don't want it going all the way to the front, and you want to make sure that it's behind the back. And that ends up being about 14 1/2 inches, at least for the standard ones. I know that different brands are different. If you're doing a smaller size diaper, it'll be smaller. And if you're doing a diaper that has a narrower crotch, it'll be narrower. And you can just figure that out by doing this whole process of working in from the outside. If you're working on a diaper or if you're trying to copy a diaper that has a very narrow crotch and you like the fit of it, it fits your baby well, when you're making a soaker pad for that, when you're making an insert for that, you'll want to have it rounded at the back. So you'll want to have it go like narrow through the middle and then widen, or else you're not going to get enough absorbency, because a narrower crotch is going to mean less fabric to absorb urine. And so you'll want to make sure to have it be more of a hourglass shaped soaker, more like, you know, wider at the front, narrow through the middle, wider at the back again. Like that, so that it can stuff in, lay flat, and still have enough fabric to absorb what you need it to absorb. And yeah, I think that's it. If you guys have any other questions about modeling your diapers and planning it, when you've just got a template and you don't, necessarily have the middle planned, ask me questions. I'm happy to help. One thing you can do if you have a diaper that fits your baby really good, but your baby's outgrown it in the rise, but you like the fit everywhere else, you want to avoid just adding to the rise and like so you might think, well, just cut it down the middle and then shift it. But then you're going to be adding to the leg size. So if the baby's also got chunky legs, that's great. But a lot of times older babies start to get thinner legs. And so one thing you can do is just add a little bit the front and the back just in the panel. So you could add like a 1/2 inch or an inch at the back and the same at the front, and then you're keeping the same leg size. Another thing you can do is the tighter that this is, the smaller the size of it is. So say that you've got a baby that's bigger now, and the template is too big on their legs. If you shrink out this curve here, like that, at the middle and the back, then you're gonna shrink that leg size, that leg hole size. It'll have wider butt coverage, and you could add more to the rise, but it's gonna make that leg smaller. And, there's lots of different ways to do that, whether it's, just having this whole curve lower and having longer wings to wrap around more. But, you'll see a lot of these patterns where they have a really big cut here, and then you'll be like, it's too loose on my baby's legs, but everything else fits right. That would be an easy way to sort of modify that and change that pattern. If you have a retail diaper that fits really well, you can just trace out the front, add about a 1/2 inch to accommodate for the fabric and the seam allowance, and then stretch out the legs and do the same thing, kind of marking your endpoints. And you'll be able to, sew yourself a very similar diaper, if not exact, with just kind of this general work. And so yeah, let's get sewing. I will cut this out and make my little cutout pieces, and I'll come back in a second to sew that diaper up.